this experience exists. So basically you can design it and you can make it better and you can make it more efficient and more special for every product and every company when most likely and often the experience is also the part of the business brand and how the brand and company is recognized. So basically I would say it's a lack of knowledge because the big companies like Apple I just mentioned or Spotify or Netflix or anything like that are really user-centered, and they are making a lot of tests, a lot of A/B tests and research how to make their services even better and how to explore unknown. The better I knew the business and the closer I worked with the owners and stakeholders, the better design process I could create, because I understood many things, many factors, and I could easily work with those areas and how to bring them together into one process. The other channels like SEO or Google Ads or anything like that is bringing us traffic, but it's not bringing us the conversion itself on the website. It's not making a purchase on the website. So it's the part of the user experience, because how we are optimizing the conversion rate and how it's done. It's also the part of the experience.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Let's Talk Digital, provided by MTA Digital, where we cover things and topics related to digital marketing. I'm Jacob, I'm a digital marketing strategist at MTA, and today my guest is Mikołaj Polaczyk, UX UI product designer at MTA. Welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Thanks.
Good to see you. User experience, which is our main topic today, is an enigmatic topic, I think. I don't think that many people truly understand the nature of it. So I'm glad that you are one of our first guests in our podcast. So today we will cover mostly the topic of not using user experience in digital marketing activities and in the website as a whole. So we also have one question from our audience. This is a very interesting question that we will cover, but I'm sure you'll manage. Mm-hmm. So first of all, I think that we can start with the basics. And can you tell me, what does it even mean to optimize something for the best user experience? Like, what's the definition of experience even?
First of all, probably the user experience overall sounds a little bit enigmatic, like you called it, but every one of us had an experience with any product they met. Either it is online product or offline product, like this laptop, this glass, or anything kind of website or mobile app. This experience exists. So basically you can design it and you can make it better and you can make it more efficient and more special for every product and every company when most likely and often the experience is also the part of the business brand and how the brand and company is recognized. So basically it's nothing new. Experiences always has been there, every product in every aspect in every company. But one day somebody decided to actually make it more specific and tried to design it step by step by overall and experiences that actually you experience during the product or anything like that.
So it's a complex definition. It's a whole set of things that we experience during our visit on a specific website or product.
Yeah, it's not only about it, because most likely user experience understood by digital world, like websites, mobile apps, native apps, even computer games. But actually the experience overall is from the start to the end of the user journey. For example, let's put it basically like the most basic example, like e-commerce. You are looking for shoes like Nike, Adidas, or anything like that. So basically, you know the brand from the offline world. Like you see the shoe on somebody's sales feed, or you see the ad on television, anything like that. That's actually the first touch point where the experience begins. Mm-hmm. Then you are looking for it for sure, like You can look for it on the offline store or on the online store, anything like that. And most likely the good user experience is then when those experiences are equal. Maybe not equal because of course it's some slightly different, but you can feel that the company in the online world and the offline world takes care on the user experience the same way. Then, of course, you're meeting the website where most likely user experience designers are hired for. So we are optimizing the general experience from the store, and we are taking care about the conversion rates and everything like that to make this business profitable. Then, of course, you order it. You're waiting for a package. That's a part where you actually are waiting for something you paid for. So actually you didn't get it yet. So the time period between the order and when you get it is also a big part of the general experience. And then you get it to your home. You open the package, and also this is the Apple, for example, the computer we have here is a perfect example of it. The whole unpackaging thing is the part of the experience as well. Unboxing, yes, unboxing. It's also the part of the experience as well. So the thing that is so smoothly and it is so nicely done that you actually can unbox it. It's so satisfying that it's also the part of the brand. The Apple computers and Apple iPads are basically recognized by this part. And then when you, for example, you don't like your product because you can feel it when you're looking for it on the e-commerce store. The part of returning it also is a part of the user experience, how the process is made and how the whole experience about it is done. Because most likely people want to try those shoes I mentioned earlier first at their home and then return it. So also the process is the part of the user experience. So in common, we can make it a conclusion that the user experience is not only the website, it's the whole process and the whole business strategy and how we care about the customer and how we make them feel good.
Okay. So just in theory, if you would be hired by a company, let's say an e-commerce company, and you would be a UX/UI designer on this website. So would in your responsibilities also be things like optimizing experience of a customer after receiving the product to their homes? Or would you even recommend changes in the advertising section like creatives or other stuff?
All depends on the general strategy of the company. If there will be a part and the company would like to improve those experiences in other channels, of course, because the wider we look, let's say we see it in the big picture, the better experience overall we can design. So as the company and the business is opened to see through not only one channel, which is basically website, of course we can take care, and we should also we should think about the processes that are the following steps after ordering, because those things have to be mentioned correctly on the website. So basically it has a big impact on the conversion rate, how we communicate that your product can be returned, because it's also the part of the safe zone, let's say feeling safe as a customer, that my purchase is not something that is done and I lost my money and I just can't return it. So basically it's a big part of the customer experience and conversion rate optimization on the website itself as well.
Okay, interesting. I never thought about it so that it's so complex, but it's actually interesting that you've covered the definition of conversion rate optimization, because I think that they are often like they're standing next to each other in terms of what comes to our minds when we're talking about user experience and also conversion rates, mainly on our website. So should we think about them as things that are basically the same but said in a different way, or are there major differences between them?
We must be honest that the part of the user experience process and why businesses that are hiring user experience designers is the part that we are turning traffic into conversion, because the other channels like SEO or Google Ads or anything like that is bringing us traffic, but it's not bringing us the conversion itself on the website. It's not making a purchase on the website. So it's the part of the user experience, because how we are optimizing the conversion rate and how it's done. It's also the part of the experience, but the processes are slightly different because the goals are slightly different. For example, sometimes things that convert well are not basically user-friendly solutions. We can think about such things like dark patterns, which are, let's say, not very well perceived practices in the online world, where we can treat as an example the subscription models where you subscribe and you actually don't know how to unsubscribe the product. The conversion rate is fine because the money is going on and the cash flow is fine, but the user is frustrated and is looking for a solution how to unsubscribe such a service, which actually follows with some steps like contacting the customer service, how to do it. So basically it's an extra cost for a company because it's somebody who has to, answer those requests. And the general feeling of the company, which is basically not fair with the user, causes the situation where finally this user will unsubscribe and will not return. And this is the biggest actually value of the user experience, which is called retention, because we both know like how expensive it is to gain a new customer. And the user experience, the role of the user experience is how to turn new customers to the customers that are constantly buying at our store. So basically are feeling well in our environment, in our ecosystem, and on our website, and are choosing our solution instead of the competition. So like you can imagine, for example, when the service will not allow me to unsubscribe my credit card from the service, as soon as I will unsubscribe it, most likely I will not go back. And for sure, I will tell my friends that this is dirty play, and let's go to the competition because they are fine for the users.
So sticking to that, conversion rate optimization, optimizing towards better conversion rates, might not mean that it's for the best user experience, but ultimately optimizing towards best user experience might not lead to better conversion rate.
Yes, exactly. Yes, we can think about it that way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that there are also these patterns that you said that might evolve around generating even better user experience, but they are not good in terms of what we're giving back, like what they're giving back to us. So can you think about any solutions or patterns that are actually in a way improving user experience, so I'm feeling good with the website or a product, but are actually dropping conversion rates?
For sure, it's the common pattern is to make let's say about this unsubscribe thing and logging out thing and deleting the account thing. We must think about it that we don't really want, because we have to find a balance between, users' perspective and business, because business is the core of the whole thing, and we must stay in something in between. So basically, we can't really hide those options to unsubscribe or log out or even delete an account. It has to be accessible, because if somebody wants to quit your service or your product, he will. So why to make it even harder? So basically, common pattern is to, for example, make those options a little more transparent, because we know that people will leave our service anyway, and we are making it slightly easier to avoid frustration and overwhelming the customer service, for example, and section where people will ask how to resign from the service and from the product. And this is the perfect example, because of course, if we make those options easier on the interface where user can easily leave our service or our website, this will for sure have an impact of the lower numbers in terms of conversion rates or anything like that, because he will not convert, because he will not be anymore on our website.
Surely. So if good user experience is what we desire at any case, basically, except maybe from these situations where it may lower our conversion rates. So at least that's what I'm thinking. Why so there aren't so many companies that are actually trying to improve that experience? Because in my opinion, I mean, obviously there are some good practices in terms of what should be done or what shouldn't be done on the website or product. Mm-hmm. But I'm not seeing that companies are employing people responsible for that or not engaging with agencies or any other partners to do this stuff for them. So why is that? Why such a good thing that may even improve our conversion rates is so rarely used?
I would say the reason why is the lack of education and lack of the knowledge about the benefits that I already mentioned. So basically the knowledge about what we can gain through the good user experience in terms of business perspective. So for example, the retention I already mentioned, or thinking about the costs that are around the product. Because sometimes you mentioned that a lot of companies maybe are not that interested in user experience design. Maybe they are not aware about, because they're thinking about how expensive good design is, but they are not thinking how expensive the bad design is and what are the hidden costs behind it. So basically, I would say it's a lack of knowledge, because the big companies like Apple I just mentioned, or Spotify or Netflix or anything like that, are really user-centered. And they are making a lot of tests, a lot of A/B tests and research how to make their services even better and how to explore unknown. So, and this is the part where actually I think this is our role as a user experience designers, to educate those businesses about the potential benefits that are coming from the user experience and how big the impact can be for their businesses and their income. But I'm talking about the big players, big ones. The smaller players, like smaller companies, most likely are understanding the UX design through graphic design. When we are talking about UX design, they are probably thinking about websites or fancy mobile apps from the graphical perspective, not what's behind it, the processes, the strategy, and potential. It also can reduce the cost of development itself, because most companies probably are not aware of that either. So after all, long story short, I would say it's a lack of education and the lack of the knowledge what user experience actually can bring to your business.
Okay. Because from my experience over the years, I was handling many Google Ads accounts in my previous years. And there's always this like ceiling that you eventually reach, that it's impossible to do better in terms of what you're able to do in the ads platform itself. You can think about other strategies, how to optimize your account, how to change your ads or something. And it's the same thing for any other source of traffic, basically, that's going to deliver traffic to the specific website. And then it's the part when the unhappiness comes from the client. Mm-hmm. Like, why are you not getting us better results? Why it's not working? Why the proposed solution or experiment is still not working? So there comes this uncertainty about what to do next. And is this the part where this certain specialist or agency or someone that's responsible for that should also think about like recommendations about improving specific things on their website? Because I'm thinking that many lack this thinking. Like, can you share the example of like, I don't know, some percentages or something? Let's say for the e-commerce, how much like the best practices, like maybe most popular best practices, can improve the whole revenue or something based on like 3 quick fixes or something. Because I think that this is a hidden gem in the overall strategy of a company.
Yeah, first of all, I would say the main points where we actually can be treated as a first that we can treat as a quick wins are the, let's say, contact forms or the checkout form. I mean, the checkout actually is the contact form if we think about it on the technical perspective, because we have those inputs and text fields we have to fill out. And there's a lot of mistakes done there because, first of all, most likely those forms are not supporting the error prevention that our users are doing. So basically, users are filling out the long form. It's exhausting for most of us when we think about it. And basically, we can imagine what happens when the user who actually explored the whole website, so he spent some time on the website. And we must remember that our users are not on the websites to be there on the website itself. They are there because they want to achieve some goal. Yes, basically they don't want to be there. We must be honest. This is the thing that we must remember, and we must think about it, how to make it the easiest possible way to drive our user into the conversion. So most likely, as I said, this is the part of the contact forms and the checkout where most likely there's no error prevention. There's more likely too long forms, which may be shorten up like to some multi-steps or 3 chunks where you can, fill out those step by step. And for sure that this is maybe obvious, but the payments options, many businesses are talking like they really know their users. They know what's their audience, but most likely many businesses, if I would ask them that, if they talked with their users, ask some questions about it, most likely the answer would be no. So what I'm telling is that the payment options is the part where we can perfectly match the way how users want to pay for the service with what we can offer. So for example, in our country, Blick is a perfect example, which is maybe mostly useful to, through the research, to get some people want to pay and how they want to interact with the checkout itself. And the next thing, of course, is maybe not in e-commerce, but in e-commerce also there are some cases like that, are the call to actions buttons. There are multiple cases where, like for reserved, the clothing industry shop is they slightly changed the call to action itself, and their conversion rate went up. Maybe, I mean, I don't know the exact numbers, but around like 1% or 2%, which in terms of the scale, it's a massive, because if you think about the whole traffic, which is there, it's a great income. And this is just one change on the button, like making the contrast higher, or even placing it on the right place where you can easily measure it on the heat maps on maybe Microsoft Clarity, which is a free tool, so no cost there. And this is a small change, and most likely I'm talking about those general things which can be seen at the first glance, but sometimes it's the solution. It's really simple, but reaching the solution, the process how to find out what is wrong on the website, is a long process. It can be long, because the worst companies are those where the experience is fine and going well, because we are seeking for a room for improvement there. So basically, those are maybe the most common things that can be treated as a quick wins, like call to action placements, the micro copy on the buttons as well, like what's the button is saying, and if it's clear for users, what's the next following action and where I will land after clicking it. So I would say this is the field which is most likely the best one to start with.
So it sounds like it's not supposed to be expensive in terms of what a certain company gains from changing these things, especially that these are like probably popular. You can find them online. You can even test them individually by yourself, just implement some tools and just do that. And you should witness the change in a short time. So then again, what's the main obstacle that people are still not doing that? Maybe they're not feeling the difference because, I don't know, the traffic is too low. It may be a case, but yes. Where is this, when does your website become eligible for profitable experiments, and when it's not the case for you?
I mean, first of all, traffic, the traffic you mentioned is an important thing, because those 2% I mentioned for the smaller players would be not a big difference. Let's be honest, when the traffic is low, 2% is not satisfying enough. But why is so expensive? Why those changes can be simple, and why is it so expensive? The expensive part is actually how complex the business is itself, because we as a user experience designers have to dive into the business itself and understand the business, which is also the part of the process. And as I already mentioned, sometimes the change can be little, but knowing about the business goals and the general perspective and the plans for the future, what are the plans of the company? This has to be coming along with each other. So I would say maybe those changes can be cheap, and companies are aware that this is expensive, because maybe again they are not aware about this part, that this has to be expensive, because small changes can be implemented straight away, like just through simple analysis. But those cheap solutions where probably is the part and the moment where the cheap part is finished, because then we have to think about the whole process, like the whole funnel, where everything is optimized, and we have to optimize this funnel from the top, like from the beginning and each step until checkout. So most likely I would say it's lack of knowledge, maybe the fear of not understanding the impact and the possibilities and potential that is in the user experience, and maybe not user experience, but conversion rate optimization in this case. And maybe it is a good point to be aware of the benefits that can follow.
Okay, so knowing the whole process might get expensive at some point at least. So when should I consider, if I have the knowledge that I need to do that, what's the difference between hiring someone to my company and like to employ to do that constantly for us? And what's the difference between him and an agency or a freelancer that's just working on it as a project for limited hours? Like when should I consider hiring someone versus engaging with an agency or freelancer?
First of all, you should think about hiring someone as an employee, hire someone just for yourself and for your company when you have, I would say, you are bigger player, I would say, because sometimes, as I mentioned, from some point, user experience has to be as close to business as possible. So basically, when you are having a strategy like marketing, sales, anything like that, user experience designer has to know those fields and has to also work with those in some way, with those people from sales, marketing, even customer service, because to design the best user experience is to understand the business. So from my experience, for example, the better I knew the business and the closer I worked with the owners and stakeholders, is the better design process I could create, because I understood many things, many factors, and I could easily work with those areas and how to bring them together into one process, and how to find the strengths and weaknesses in the whole experience, as I mentioned, which are basically also from the offline and the online world. So I would say, if you have in some way bigger company, or maybe you are after this step where you actually fix the basics, let's say, that are based on the patterns, like common patterns from, for example, from Biomerch Institute, which are covered by many research, and then you are stepping into the field where you have to explore it more. So basically, you have to talk with those, with the users, with the clients, with the customers, which is the part of the research, and your engagement in that field has to be higher, because you have to advise sometimes with the business itself about your decisions. You have to consult it. The biggest benefit and the biggest clue of this whole thing by hiring your own designer is also this education part, where the designer is bringing the whole philosophy into the company, and every team in the company can understand it better. We have such a thing in the industry that is called UX maturity, which is basically from levels. It's described by levels from the lowest to the highest, where we can easily know how mature in terms of user experience and being aware about how important it is the company is. So bringing yourself and user experience designer into your company helps you to gain this UX maturity in the whole company, to make it, to teach those people. It's an added value, I would say, not only designing things, but also teaching people and telling how user experience is important for the business.
So it's like a part of organizational culture even.
Yes. Many user experience designers, especially in the bigger companies, their role is not only to design things, but also to conduct some workshops to explore new possibilities. But to explore, you have to be as close to other teams and business itself as possible. So when you are close to those teams, you are at the same time you are teaching those people. Those people can understand it better and can find the values that I mentioned on the beginning of our talk. So it helps. And when you think about it, when we think about it, when user experience designer is telling the whole thing about user experience to other teams like customer service, they are aware that this user is important and his experience is also important. So they can there's a possibility that even this part of the customer service may be a little better. So it's an added value that spreads like all along the company where he is hired.
That's quite a complex job, to be honest. So can we assume that even if you hire an agency for the start and they're making these obvious tasks to improve the user experience on the website, improve conversion rates, etc., so I guess that agencies are at some stage doomed, because they're like, I can see a possibility that you still want to be engaged with them instead of hiring someone to your company. Like there is a certain level that you just gotta have this person inside of your company to get to the next level.
Not really. I mean, I told about those players that are having, let's say, first of all, budget for it, because not every company wants to give a lot of money from the start for the user experience, and the agency is a good point to start with. And the agency is also the good solution for the businesses that want to a little bit fill out their gaps in the team. Sometimes it's even when the companies have their own user experience designers, they also are hiring an extra designers to help them. So an agency is a great support for those companies, and it's also the great possibility to grow your business with an extra designers from outside. But what I'm saying is that the agency is a good point where basically you can fill out your team. For example, you have your own developers. So the perfect example is that you don't need the full-time UX designer because you are just starting with it. And then you can, hire this designer from the agency and find those gaps in your business that can be fixed. And this is not so binding. This is the safe solution for them. And many companies are hiring agencies just because of it, because sometimes they just want to fix specific thing, like, hey, we have a problem with checkout, we have to take a look at it. And then hiring a user experience designer just from them, this is pointless. So this is maybe in that case waste of money. And then of course because this can grow to the longer perspective cooperation where the agency can be just hired for one big client. So just to have this own team of designers just for one client, which is basically building their strategy and design. Mm-hmm. So depending on the needs of the business, sometimes it's either more profitable to hire a designer to your company, but sometimes it's better to hire an agency because in many businesses there's no need to have a full-time UX designer. Sometimes it's just one process, sometimes it's consulting. Consulting is really, really, really common in the industry, where the business want to consult their decisions with the designer and get some view on the direction where they can It depends on the needs. Agencies also are fine for like us, like MTA is also fine for businesses that want to build their product from the scratch, and then we are just handling this business. Of course, we can optimize this later. It depends on the client and his strategy if he wants it. But they just like building a house. We are just hiring somebody who understands us. He knows our needs, and we are building this product in the way they desire. Of course, with the whole process, with the whole research, of course, depends on the client's need and the budget. But then it's up to the business, like what he's doing next. He's not binded by UX designer who is hired inside the company.
So there are many ways to acquire help from this area. So out of curiosity, what are ways, like models of cooperation? Because I'm thinking that there's needs to be a fixed fee, as an example, just to get done some things that require attention. You mentioned consulting, so I imagine it's also an hourly rate of some level. And is there also an opportunity for like success rate or something, success fee, depending on, I don't know, improving conversion rate by X%, which will occur in revenue higher by X? And are companies also hiring people based on that model?
Honestly, I didn't meet the model, like the payment model, like you mentioned, which is based on success fee. Maybe there is, but the most common ones are the fixed price, time and material, and the hourly rate for consulting, where, for example, 1 hour costs X amount of money. So those three are most likely the most common. But maybe there is somebody who's, especially in CRO niche, maybe there's somebody who's based on the success fee. And honestly, when they have a big client like Amazon or anything like that, this is the perfect
profitable.
This is
for both, actually.
Yeah, for both, because the company can count on the agency. Like, they care about the higher conversion rate because it means the more money for them, and they care about bringing this conversion rate up, even those 0.5% or 1%, right? Because we both know, like, Amazon has a
traffic is not an issue in their case.
Yes, exactly.
So maybe we've just discovered a fresh idea of settlement. Okay, I think that before, most interesting, maybe depends on what interests people. The question, I think it's time for a call to action, which is our
That's the interesting part.
Yes, it's the question from our audience. So it's about techniques, and which technique will allow us to like possibly the quickest way achieve our results and like take care of the problems that are on the website, because there are several techniques. This is simple or not theory. So which one would you suggest are the best to handle these problems the quickest way possible?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, there are a lot of techniques, a lot of tools, for sure. I would call it a tool because, for example, interview with the user is also a tool to gain some extra information from them. We must think about those tools like digital ones, where we have a Google Analytics, we have Clarity, but we both know it takes time to gather some data. The quickest ones are basically the simplest because, for example, if we want to get a quick feedback from the users, we can bring to the table such thing like 5 seconds test, which is, for example, in our office, you are sitting there in the desk, drinking coffee, you have a break, and I'm coming there and, hey, Kuba, like, can you just take a look and what's the main goal on this website? And you just look at it for 5 seconds and you see, and you can also tell me what's the more standing out element on this interface and what's your understanding of it. Like, your first impression. There says a lot because we can imagine those landing pages where the most common call to action is the button which leads to the contact form. And if you can't find it, or it took you more than 5 seconds, that's a red light for me. Like, something has to be changed. Next thing is a guerrilla test. We can call it, in English, that would be a guerrilla test, which is also this similar thing, but it's a simply written scenario of our solution. And we are, again, I'm hitting you in the office and asking, hey, Kuba, can you just test it and log in to my website? And you are trying, because in the first iteration, most likely it's trying. And I can already find some gaps in my design because you are the user who can see my project from the different perspective. So there's a common sentence which means, quote, get out of the building, because many user experience designers are, sitting there in their computers and they're designing things on the calls. But the easiest part is to just go outside and ask people how your solution is working. and gather early feedback and change your solution accordingly and make it better in the short time. So those are two tools for sure that are including users into our process in the early stage. But we have to remember that benchmarking, which you probably know because a lot of us are working in benchmarking, is also a tool. So we can compare in some way and do a research on the direct and indirect competition where the solution is the best that we can use in our project. So sometimes it's good to take a look on the internet. For example, now we have a ChatGPT. We can easily ask him, like, I have this idea. I'm creating a project about it. Can you just give me some competition examples that I can compare with? So I would say those are the most common, and we actually did it in our project. In one of our projects before when we went with the scenario of the interview and user test, we tried it first with our coworkers. We just invited them for a short testing session, and just first of all we tested because it's a win-win situation. We tested the solution and we tested the scenario, which has to be tested as well, because sometimes you just find out that there are some questions missing that you would like to ask the direct users of the direct product that you are designing.
Mm-hmm. So it's not even the need of asking like buyer persona or someone that is in the target group. It's just about asking a random person to get the first insight about what may go wrong.
From the first point, like from the start, yes, that would be perfect if this person from the office is somehow related to the niche you are creating the project for. So that would be a perfect scenario. We had this luxury because we are designing a solution for teachers and parents, and we have a lot of parents here. So we had a big luxury of it. But from the first point, there's no need to fit this user, like to be the perfect persona, because what we are testing on the first point is the usability, the logic of the whole process, the flow, what's coming after each screen. So there's no need at the first point to match this user with our project, right? This is the later, of course, when we are going to some research phase. It's better to, of course, recruit specific people from the specific profile for the project, because if you will, for example, you are not a teacher and I'm testing a solution for the teachers, you don't have this point of view, even if the solution itself is similar. There are contact forms, there are call to actions, there's payment, right? But you are not a teacher. You have a different point of view. So
different
later,
perspective, different needs.
Yes, and different needs and different edge cases, which you just don't know from your life because you can't, because you are not a teacher. So later on, of course, you can't base on those tests, but this is the way you can quickly find gaps in your project and how to improve them.
Okay, I think that satisfies our audience. So this is actually interesting because I think that from the start of our episode, we're talking about some schemes, some good practices, best practices even. You've mentioned even Baymart,
Yes.
which is a renowned company that gives certificates for being a good user experience designer.
Mm-hmm.
So it all is strictly about knowing what practices are best, which are not. So let's imagine a situation where we have some website. It may be e-commerce, it may be B2B something. And us and also all of our competitors are following the same best practices. They actually discovered everything that we know as well. And let's say that this is only theoretically, but all of these websites have pretty much the same solutions. So is that where the whole point of user experience or improving it ends? Like, is it like risky maybe to be innovative and try something new? Like, there's this risk that you may go into the wrong direction and then your competitors are getting ahead of you. So What does it mean to be truly innovative in this industry, in this area? Is that something that is maybe popular? Are there any like cases from the history that change the knowing and understanding of what a good user experience actually is? So how does it work?
We have to start with the thing, what we understand by innovation, because it can be understood really in a really different way. You mentioned those patterns and new solutions, which most companies are using. Let's remember that the patterns are for the tool, which is the website. And what the website offers is the completely different thing, which is also the part of the user experience. Because but you mentioned e-commerce, right? You have Allegro, you have Morella, you have Amazon, right? Those things are e-commerce, but the offer is different. The policy of the business, the rules that they are following is different. The value they are giving us is different. For example, let's say Temu, right? This is a cheap shop where you can buy a lot of things for a small amount of money, but it's still an e-commerce. There are different values. This is where actually the website is the tool. You can improve it through the patterns. That would be a perfect scenario where the business will follow all these patterns and it went through all the Biomart Institute recommendations. That would be a great point. But we must remember that first of all, your business is growing and changing. So you have to change design as well. And the user needs are changing as well. So there is, of course, the risk to following an unknown, like being special, to be, have an e-commerce store which is standing out and totally different. But there's a rule which is actually one of the Nielsen heuristics, which stands that people and the users are spending more time on other websites than yours. So they're knowing those patterns, and it's easier to follow these patterns than learning them in a new way, because they don't have a time for it. They don't have they even probably don't want it to try. So it's even better to follow those rules and those common patterns than being innovative, because there is a risk that by being innovative, your users just won't use your product, won't use your website. So of course it's safe to follow those patterns, but it's also, we have to remember from some point, we have to explore unknown. The light bulb wasn't invented by constantly making candles better. So sometimes you have to go out and seek for something new. And bigger companies are doing so. Like they are making their own solutions. They are making their own, products which are based on the new solutions. Like for example, TikTok with the swipe gesture, or Tinder with the swipe gesture, right? Those things are maybe they're done by the bigger players because it's expensive, and the research process is expensive. And the good part is the smaller players can take some benefits from it. You can learn from them. Like, for example, Amazon will do anything special on their website, which is probably will not happen so fast. Then you, as a small player, can take some benefits from it. You can learn and take some extra benefits from the bigger players, who has done some research and spent some money. Of course, you have to be careful, because by some decisions, you can see it from the start, like you see the interface and this is your benchmark. Because first of all, user experience is sometimes not a priority of a lot of businesses, which are big players. For example, Amazon I'm talking about, or even some Google solutions. Like this is also not sometimes a value, because the value is in the whole completely different direction. And by benchmarking those solutions and blindly following them may cause you some problems in the future, because you are thinking, okay, they're a big player, this is a big company, they're not what they're doing. But sometimes they just don't care about it, because the goals are in the different place, which we actually don't know about, because we don't have those insights.
Okay, so for the smaller players, it's about mimicking the solutions for older ones, bigger ones, but to be careful not to do it because they have their own insights about what's working for them. We don't know that. So I would say that the whole user experience is more about evolving, not making a revolution.
Like, it's not about reinventing the wheel. Most likely a lot of solutions were already designed, already created. The thing is to make those elements, puzzles, into something new. Like with creativity. Creativity is not about making up some new thing. It's about how to use existing things to something new. So in my opinion, it's how actually design works. If you will look for some websites examples, there's a lot of it in the internet. The clue is how to fit those solutions into your business in the right context, and how this solution will bring your business money.
Beautifully said.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. I think that we know enough about the whole user experience. For now, at least, maybe we'll have another episode about that. I'm open to that solution. But final question, do you have any advice for the people that start their journey as a UX/UI designer? Because I imagine it's tough to get there. So, any advice?
First of all, of course, it's now, especially we are recording this in 2024 after big layoffs in tech industry. And we know that it's hard right now to get into the industry, especially that the UX may not be a priority for big businesses. And there's not the place where the budget is planned for. But how to start? I would say it's good to start maybe with my story, because I'm the guy who went through this path and can share some from my mistakes that I done and from the things that worked out. And first of all, the common thing is to do some general courses about design, like, using how to use Figma, how to use a lot of extra tools, which may be not even needed from the start in the company where you will work for. So of course, it's good to know the basics, but the biggest value comes from finding a mentor, like somebody who will lead you through the process and will share with the mistakes that you've done. So I would say it's also by combining your current experience, like work experience, into UX direction, because as you probably are aware right now after our talk, UX is a wide word. It's about sales, about smart. It has a lot of in common with other areas like sales, marketing, technology, management, anything. So sometimes it's even worth to take a look, like I did, about people who are in the industry already and what was their path, what they did in the past, and maybe not even try to go into UX directly, but step by step learning some other skills on the other positions that may be beneficial for your path, like customer service, maybe project management, maybe even sales in technology. So, and then step by step going through the next levels, because you can learn a lot of valuable skills there. And knowing how to use Figma is like knowing how to ride a bike right now. It's, I would say it's a basic. So mentor, what was their path, and networking. Maybe this is the most important thing. We must know that the industry works in that way, that before they will release the job offer, they will ask about if you know somebody who can fit into this role. Because first of all, it's cheaper than releasing a job offer. And then it's more safe. Because somebody, you know the guy and you know that he is capable of many things. So going to conferences, meetups, maybe organize your own meetup. I know that people, honestly, I didn't do such thing, but I know that people are doing these things. Like they are making events in their towns, talking with people, even asking directly on LinkedIn, because UX, the whole design, the design industry is, I would say, opened for new people. And if you will reach out to some senior or anything or anybody on LinkedIn, I highly doubt that he will, tell you to you know what. And you can also ask them for some advices. You can ask them directly about your current situation and what would they tell you to do next. So there is a lot of possibilities out there, especially right now on LinkedIn, where you can post many things and do some networking. And that is the part where I would say it's even better than creating a perfect CV or resume. Of course, the portfolio is super important right now. And to create one that is valuable, it has to not only right now maybe have a concept design, but something that is working already on the market. But there's an easy way to do so, to reach out to some non-profitable organizations, right? Where they need somebody to help them and to create a solution for them on a website. Of course, maybe you will be not paid for it, but there's an extra value that you worked with a real product and you helped somebody to solve their problems, which is basically the core of our profession. We are solving problems. The interface is the cherry on top. This is a tool that solves the problem, where it's worth to look for those opportunities. Even sometimes if you are using a lot of some application or website, go for it and make some adjustments through your research and process. I know stories where somebody was applying to the company and they just did some adjustments on the website and included into the job application. Mm-hmm. Like, here is a value. I found those things, and we can change your product in that way. Mm-hmm. And you stand out. You have to stand out and do some not common practices which everybody's following. You have to be special. And it's not so hard to be special. It's also, you have to think about it and how to use the possibilities around you.
Okay. I was smiling previously because when you were saying about how to become somehow related to the design thing, I was imagining a role-playing game and a whole skill tree. And I was thinking about it like, you're not starting with a class of UX designer.
Yes.
You need to unlock these perks and skills to finally unlock this specialization, this class of being a UX designer. And there are many paths that on your way to get there eventually.
Yes. This is a perfect comparison, actually, because we have this diagram, like this picture, which shows what this UX design is. And it has the user, the business, the technology, and it like covers with each other. And the tree you mentioned, like the skill tree, let's call it that way, is a perfect example what you have to know to become a UX designer, because you have to know how to, for example, sell, how to talk with business, how to talk with users, how to analyze data, how to design in Figma. So you are gaining those skills and you are leveling up your UX character. And this is the perfect example. I did it in that way. I knew that right now it's probably even harder. Right now it's to jump into the junior position because, first of all, there's not many of them. And second of all, if you try, there's like 600 people who are trying it as well. Sometimes it's even better to get some experience from other professions and try yourself on the mid position or early mid position, where especially in some companies, there's no difference between junior and mid, because you mentioned about having an in-house UX designer. Sometimes I can't imagine in the company where there's no UX designer and suddenly they're making a junior position. Yeah. So we'll just hire a UX designer. And the thing is that you have to be aware, because it's the next thing. If you will follow that path, you have to learn fast and you have to deal with problems constantly. I mean, you have to learn how to swim. I mean, it's the easier way to jump in, but it's also harder because, there is a stress. You are learning things in a run. You're building a plane while it's flying, basically. So, but it's worth it. And it is the perfect way to start, because sometimes it's no big difference between junior and mid. From mid to senior, of course, there's a big difference, but between those first, I would say not really, because what makes the difference between junior and mid is that mid is more like he can take care about himself. He talks with business, he talks with clients. And if you, for example, worked in the customer service or sales, it's not a big problem because you already did that. So,
okay. Interesting. Thank you so much for being with me today. I think not only our audience, but myself learned from everything that you shared with us. So thank you for being with us, and we'll see each other in another episode. Thank you.
Thank you too. And I hope you enjoyed it. Till the next one.
Thank you and bye.